Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Hughes of the World. Sorry to keep you waiting there, that took far too long. My video kept sticking, so it was showing a couple of seconds of me moving and then it was just like a freeze frame. So today we are in Belgium. We're in Belgium. Look, it's Belgium behind me. I don't know where that is in Belgium. Is that Brussels? I don't know. I just found some stock photo after I typed Belgium into the internet. So yes. We're in Belgium. I'm going to say hello to everybody whose messages have just been deleted off the screen here, unfortunately. But we do have messages from Alison Sutherland asking why Facebook is blocking my live stream. I don't know. And then I've got Alex Morgan saying evening all. I've got Martin Ziner saying Belgium, beer, Brussels, and fries served with mayonnaise. Did I miss anything? Martin, I may as well just go home now because that was what I was just going to talk about. And Tintin, obviously, as pointed out by Alex Morgan, saying good old Tintin comics. Here come the Belgians evening. Bruges is lovely. Yeah, it's like an effing fairy tale. Hello from Brussels, says MMTV 1972. I hope that's not passive-aggressively saying don't say anything bad about my country. It might be. I don't know. Well, Richard Processor just says hi. Hi. Sorry about the delay. I'm having technical problems. Oh, that was me. My favourite wallpaper is beige. What's yours? My favourite wallpaper. My favourite wallpaper is wood chip. Have you ever tried to get wood chip off a wall? Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. It's the biggest nightmare ever. So what I would do if I was in number 10 is I would just wood chip all the walls so that whoever succeeded me had to then scrape. Oh no, because they wouldn't do it themselves. They'll get some servant to do it, wouldn't they? Damn, that's just backfired my entire plan. Well, if I was selling a house to some people that I didn't like, you know, if I had to give it to the bank or something, I'd put wood chip on all the walls, and hopefully the next people will have to. Actually, no, that's a bit mean on the next people. Okay, forget this analogy. Doesn't matter. I don't like wallpaper. I'll just paint the wall. Just paint the wall. Bruges, chocolate, waffles, and diamonds goes without saying. I love Belgium, beautiful country, and the EU Parliament is there. Yes, technical problems, that's what you get for hanging out with Wayne from Basildon. Indeed, Brenner, indeed. Funny thing is, I know London better than Brussels. What's the difference between fries and chips, says Martin Ziner. Well, fries are narrower, they're thinner, and they're more fatty, actually, because over if you have like a portion of them, they've got more surface area for the fat, so they're actually unhealthier. So little skinny French fries are actually more unhealthy than big fat chips that you get from the chippy. Richard Prosser said, I have lived and worked in Belgium for a year. I found it to be a boring place mostly. Also had my one and only accident there. Very debatable whether it was my fault, but I'm not going to argue. Fair enough. In Belgium, chips to crisps. Yes, in America they are as well. Battle of the Bulge, says Jeremy Goff. Yes, indeed. Name a famous Belgian. I know one. And Waterloo. Famous Belgian. Plastic Bertrand. Was he Belgian? Oh, brilliant. I thought he was French. You see, because everyone goes, no good French rock and roll. And I say, what about Patrick Bertrand? But if he was Belgian, then, oh well. Ça plan pour moi. You know, that song. It's used in 127 hours. It's a very good song. The Grand Palace, City Hall, picture behind your hat, I think, Graham. Oh, yes. That's the palace of Leopold II, I think. Was it? Or was it before then? It was before then. So Patrick Bertrand didn't sing Ça plaint pour moi. It was playback Milli Vanilli style. The song was from Lou Diprich. Oh, well, there you go. Taki says, I would kill for some Belgian beer now. I would kill for a beer. I haven't had beer in bloody ages. I ran out of beer about 4 weeks ago. And I can't afford to buy any more. Yeah. Don't you love it when people say it is what it is? But, it is what it is. So let's just jump in. Let's just jump straight in to old Belgium, which isn't that old, actually. It's one of the youngest countries in the world, actually, compared with other countries, especially in Europe. Okay, so basically, what am I doing here? What am I doing? I'm trying to get the map up. But we'll do that in a moment. Right, okay, so here you go. Fast facts about Belgium. First of all, Audrey Hepburn was born in Brussels, which means that It's the greatest place in the world because Audrey Hepburn was born there. They also produce 220,000 tons of chocolate every year, which is amazing considering I don't think they have any cacao trees. Cacao. Okay, it's a cacao plant, but what you get out of it is cocoa. It's really just cacao. Anyway, so they don't produce any cacao because it's impossible to create unless you have a rainforest to your disposal. The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels was actually written in Brussels. The highest point in Belgium is actually a lot lower than the highest building in the world. The Belgian divorce rate is eye-wateringly at 70%. Come on, Belgians, stop getting married unless you mean it. Yeah. How about you mean it before you get married? Okay, 70% divorce rate. Not good. It's the highest in Western Europe. Not the highest in Europe because I think that dubious title goes to one of the Balkans. Let's just say one of the Baltic states. Sorry, not the Balkans, the Baltic states. I think it's Lithuania, or it could be Latvia. I don't know. Look it up. It's like, who's got the highest divorce rate in Europe? And you can tell me in the comments. So what else? Until the 1970s, light beer was served at school lunchtime for the kids. I love that. Also, Belgian men are the second tallest in the world after Dutchmen from next door. Belgians pay amongst the highest taxes in Europe, 57.8% on high earners, as it should be, because they've got enough money. They don't need any more. They don't need more. They need to give back to society, which has given them all these riches. Nearly 80% of the world's billiard balls are Belgian. And talking of balls, they have a building made out of balls as well. Okay, so there's your fast facts about it. Let's talk about the flag. Should we talk about the flag? The flag. Okay, so first of all, the flag is really boring. It's the German flag on its side with two of the colours swapped around. It is really boring. And it's this weird 13:15 ratio. And the red symbolises Blair, and the yellow symbolises blah, and the black symbolises blah. Who cares? It's boring. It's a tricolour. All flags that are tricolour are really boring. They're just three colours. That's it, in a row. I hate them. I just wish countries would be a bit more imaginative with their flags. Next week, I'll be talking about Belize. They have a very imaginative flag, and I'll be talking about that a lot more. But basically, these are the colours taken from the Belgian coat of arms. So what they've done is they've done that thing, on Photoshop where they go colour picker, and they've gone, oh, there's a bit of red there and on the claws, and then there's a bit of yellow there on the body. Is it a lion or something? And then there's the black of the background. Okay, they'll do. Just put them on a flag. Yeah, it's done. Right, the languages that they speak are Flemish, which is Dutch, but don't call it Dutch because it's not Dutch, it's Flemish, but it's exactly the same as Dutch. It's French as well, which is the southern half of the country, and there's a bit of German as well, which is in the eastern side of the country. Just a little bit, not much. I'll show you on the map. The currency is the euro. That's pretty easy, isn't it? The national symbol is a little boy having a wee, and they claim to have invented French fries, even though they're called French fries and not Belgian fries. So they missed a trick there, didn't they? And they do eat them with mayo, which I quite like. But what I would do is get some Bocas hot sauce from Bocas del Toro in Panama and mix it in with the mayonnaise, and then dip your chips in that, because that is just the best. It is the best. It's just like spicy mayonnaise and chips. It works. Just trust me on this one. It works. You can drink... This is a good one. You can drink a different Belgian beer every day for 4 years. There's that many producers of beer in Belgium, which I really love. The population's about 10 million, by the way. Belgians do not like talking about money. They're reserved about talking about money for some reason. They have some famous painters like Rubens and Enzo and Magritte and Van Eyck. And also they've got some famous cartoons like the Smurfs and Asterix and Thorgal and Gaston and stuff like that. They're famous for cartoonists. Apparently they've got the most cartoonists per square mile of any country in the world. Tomorrowland is the largest electronic dance festival in the world, and that is in Belgium. And also Jacques Brel, just to bring it back around from Audrey Hepburn to Jacques Brel. Jacques Brel, one of the best songwriters of the 20th century, was actually from Belgium. So let's dive into the geography. Jean-Claude Van Damme. Sorry, Nico, I didn't mention Jean-Claude Van Damme. I didn't mention Audrey Hepburn, though, who is the most beautiful woman who ever lived, which is quite impressive. Yes, I Yeah. Adam Kate says, my favourite quote from Belgium's favourite fictional detectives, when someone's just delivered him a parrot, I've got my poirot for my poirot. Oh. Yes, Adam. Very good joke. Monsieur Hercules Parrot. Famous Belgian detective of Agatha Christie fame. But Richard Prosser says some of the motorways have potholes in them. I was told that Belgium had the highest traffic accident rate in Europe. Well, I do know that they leave the lights on at night on the on the roads. They never turn the lights off. You know, like on motorways in the UK, they turn the lights off. Well, there's no lights between the junctions. Yeah, they don't do that in Belgium. In Belgium, all the lights stay on. Yeah, maybe they are just really bad drivers. What? No tomato sauce? Blasphemy! Says Duke Vengeance. I'm just saying. Try it. Try it before you knock it. All right. London has a bigger population. That is true. Flemish relates to Dutch, like British English relates to American English, says MMTB 1972, who I think is going to be full of very useful nuggets of information tonight. Talking about the map, in 1512, Gerardus Mercator is famed as a cartographer who developed the first world map. No, Pete, it wasn't the first world map. It was the first projection that could be used in shipping of an entire map of the world because of the way that all the lines of latitude just went straight up. Longitude. Shit. All the lines of longitude went straight up, which distorted the poles massively. But it did mean that if you followed one of those lines, you'll go north. Yeah? Like, if you look at one of those maps that sort of bends the edges a bit, it's a bit more realistic because obviously the world is a globe. But if you try and follow those lines, any one of those lines except for 0 degrees, you won't go north. Anyway, sorry, you won't go straight. You won't go straight north. All Europe, nano, pesky little island revisited. What? What did I do? Okay, right. So we're gonna go into the map now. If I can just get it up. And here it is. Yes, this is. Oh, what have I done? Broken everything. I haven't broken anything. It's okay. There we go. Way. Oh, it's on the United Kingdom, which is nice. There it is. I'm just gonna zoom out so you can see the world. There you go. You see it's round. Told you it was round. There's Panama over there. See there where that little star is? That's where Ginger Island is. Cool, eh? Anyway, so over here is this place called Europe. You may recognize it from such movies as I'm trying to think of a movie. It's Wednesday. It's Tuesday. It must be Belgium. And if I zoom in a bit more, you'll see Belgium here, which is nice. And let's just check that you're seeing that all right. Yeah, you're seeing that right. Okay, so this is Belgium, and you'll see this is the Netherlands, and this is France. And basically, if you draw a line from this bit to this bit, this is the Walloon region, the southern region where they speak French. This bit on the top here, next to the Netherlands, is the Flanders region, as in Ned Flanders, and they speak Dutch up there, or rather Flemish. And this region here, where I'm just pointing, is where they speak German language. It's just like a little bit here. It's not very much of it. And there's Luxembourg as well, which will come into the story later, because this was all one country for a bit, and then this was all one country, and that was all one country, and it's very complicated. Right, anyway, so I'll zoom in so you can get a bit of a feel for the place of Belgium. So here we have Brussels. And also, I should point out that Belgium is the most offensive word in the universe, according to Douglas Adams of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fame. There's Brussels there, which is very famous. There's Ghent as well. There is Bruges, as in the movie In Bruges. You haven't seen the movie In Bruges. I really, really, really want you to watch it because it is a fantastic, fantastic movie. Some of the borders of old Belgium are a little bit rum. If we go over here, this is all a bit weird. So we go right over here, and you can already see something very strange is going on here. Basically, see this road? There's a road here. If I zoom in, you see this road, right? This road's in Belgium, but this is Deutschland, and this on the other side is Deutschland. So this is Belgium, and then it's not even a road; it's just a path. It's just I think it's just a path. Well, there you go. So that's Belgium, and then it's this whole area here. This is Germany, which is a bit weird. And then there's some more weirdness down here, and then there's more weirdness elsewhere. There's some more weirdness with the old the lines, the sort of double line, little enclave, exclave thing going on. There's somewhere over on the French border where it's similar, it's just a bit weird. But the weirdest place is over here, and it is a place. It says two names. You can see it here. Oh God, it looks like someone's beard. There's I think it's pronounced Barley. I don't know. I might be saying it wrong, but I'm going to say Barley. There's Barley Nassau over here, and then there's Barley Herzog over here. And basically, this is a town which is completely surrounded by the Netherlands, except it's got all these little enclaves in them, which are actually Belgium. So if I zoom right in, there you go. So this square here. It's not square. This strange shape is the Netherlands. This bit here, comprising of these buildings, and this is Belgium over here. And over here we have some more weirdness where it's like, oh my God, look at these. All these grey lines are borders. So that's Belgium there. That's Netherlands there. That's Belgium over here. So yes, as you can see, it's all a bit nuts. It's all a little bit nuts. Now, if you actually go down onto the street level view, you can actually see where they mark out the ground, on the ground. Oh, don't go over there, Graham. Where are you going over there for? Go back. We're looking at this thing. I hate street view. Does it do this for you? Does it go all over the shop? Okay, so you can see a B there for Belgium, and an NL, and that stands for Netherlands. And the border ones right the way through there. So basically, there were two guys, and they both owned this. They were both lords of the manor. Lords of the manor they were, and they let me come back. There were two chaps. They were both lords of the manor, and they decided to split the place just the maddest way. Basically, I think originally it was like one of them said, well, I'll have all the houses, you can have all the fields. And they went, all right. And they sat there with a map, drawing them out. But in World War II, that town was quite important because, in World War One, because the Germans invaded Belgium in World War One, and some Belgian refugees were able to get into that town. And because the Netherlands weren't part of the war, the Germans couldn't go across to get to them, so there was people hiding out in that town for the duration of World War One. Right, anyway, what else was going to tell you? Oh, yes, the places in Belgium have the same, have different names for the cities, whether they're a German city or a French. No, they have a French name, they have a German name, and they have a Flemish name. And also, if I just go back to the map here, let me go back to the map because I want to just show you something really. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's just kind of, I guess interesting. But if I can find this, I'll be chuffed. I'll be absolutely chuffed if I can find this. But if I zoom out again, and my internet hurries up, God, lightning fast internet here. So yes, what else was going to show you? I was going to show you Waterloo is in Belgium, and that's where what's his name? Napoleon met his Waterloo in Waterloo. But if I zoom in here, I'm going to see if I can find this place. There's a place down here somewhere. There it is. Oh, I found it straight away. That was really good. Okay, there's a place here called Durboy. And this is the smallest city in the world. There you go. It's absolutely freaking tiny. It's only got 500 people live here. It's really diddy. Let's have a look at the satellite. This is Durboy, and it's the smallest city in the world. There you go. It was given its city status back in the 14th century, and it's got one road. It's got like one road. So there you go. Just thought I'd share that with you there. Also, Spa. There's a town called Spa, and that's where we get the word spa from when you say, I'm going for a spa, which is something that people say now and again. Right, back into the things, because I'm gonna dive right in. I'm gonna dive right into the history in a moment. Okay, so before I do that, I'm gonna go into the messages that I've got up. I've got a super chat. Oh my God, thank you. Belgium is the size of Belgium, says Chubai. I love that. MMTB 1972, thank you very much. €10. Fries are not French. Real binti potatoes, wash dry, and then bake 6 minutes at 160°C in beef tallow. Cool them on paper towel and bake for 3 minutes at 180°C in peanut oil. Serve it mayo. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for that super chat. I really, really appreciate it. MMTB 1972. And please don't hate me when I start going on about Belgian history in a moment. You might just want your money back. I don't know. Most European countries are young. That's very true. Belgium is perfect, says Taki. Oh, you won't go that far. Adrian Wilson, my great-grandfather worked intensively in Belgium for quite a while in the trenches with the 14th Infantry Brigade, 5th Division, BEF, in the Ypres salient. Not sure he enjoyed it much though. No, didn't want to be fighting in Ypres. It was. I've been to Ypres. I've been to the war graves. There is it Menham Gate? Is that Ypres or is that somewhere else? Probably at Menham. Anyway, I would kill for some Belgian beer right now. While you were having technical difficulties, Graham, I went downstairs for a cup of tea. I'm here now. Do you know what I did in the end? Because I was so frustrated trying to get my camera to... I unplugged my camera from the USB port that it goes into, and I plugged it into a different USB port on my same laptop, and it worked. Electric Toilet, Jean-Claude Van Damme. My favourite quote, I've read that one. Don't look up Audrey Hepburn, you keep on staring. Yeah. Oh, Audrey. Maybe we should just replace this whole video with just a picture of Audrey Hepburn and we can all just admire her. I mean, even all the women I know who, demonstrably straight, just think Audrey is the most beautiful woman that ever existed. I can't disagree with them. Robin Callio from Belgium co-created the World Wide Web with Tim Berners-Lee at CERN. That is very true. It was a Belgian co-creator. Here's an interesting bit of trivia about my town. I'm from the small Belgian town of Poppering, close to the French border. During World War II, it was a strategic location for the British Army. That's interesting. It was close to the front line, but still safe from enemy shelling. Because of that, there was a big field hospital in the town. After the war, lots of British cemeteries were built here. Many years later, in the 80s, the Belgium's first metal music festival will be held in Popperinge. During the first two editions, everything went smooth. But in the third edition, a bunch of German bikers dug up the skeletons of World War I soldiers. What the... What? Tied them to their bikes and drove around town with them. After that incident, the festival got cancelled. Oh my God. Oh my God. What were they? That's the... Thanks for that, Leonard. But, oh my God. Lee Corn says, in one of the taxi movies, the police are trying to get a confession out of Belgium, so they play a Jacques Brel record, then scratching the needle across it. He starts crying and confesses. Love it. Schengen is a wonderful achievement of friendship and openness. Yes, but Schengen is in Luxembourg, so we're not doing that today. I love Bruges. The only bars that I've been to that sell winter leffe. Oh, there's a winter version. There's a Christmas Tuborg if you go to Copenhagen in Denmark, which I actually quite like. Tim the Traveller on YouTube is good for some weird Belgian borders. Also the highest point, which isn't the highest point. So, yeah, because you could go somewhere else, couldn't you? And then just put a stick in the ground, climb to the top of the stick, and then that would be the highest point. Many Belgian refugees came to Britain in World War I. Hercule Parrot almost certainly came from Agatha Christie's familiarity with Belgian citizens who had fled to Devon. That's interesting. Freud Sigmund 72 says, in 2018, the Netherlands and Belgium made a land swap in order to correct some of the strange borders with islands in the Maas River. Oh, do you know what? I was actually looking at the Maas River before I was doing this, looking for those islands. I didn't realise that they'd actually sorted that out. She didn't sing Moon River, though. Doris Day for me. Who did sing Moon River? I know that she was dubbed by Marnie Nixon for My Fair Lady, but who dubbed her for Moon River? It wasn't Louis Armstrong, if that's what you're thinking. NATO headquarters are in Mons, Belgium. I was there once, driving right into the compound with a private car unchallenged. Was there to pick up another coffee machine. Wow. Okay, so, yes, we're going to dive into the history now. Here we go. So, Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, known as the Low Countries for many, many years. The borders that we know of, and we all know and love, were only joined in the 19th century. The Romans invaded in 57 BC, and Julius Caesar mentioned I don't know how to say this, but I'm going to say the Belgi, or it's like, it looks to me like it should be algae, but it's Bel instead, so I'm going to say Belgi. Okay, I'm going to say Belgium. Julius Caesar mentioned Belgium during his conquest of Gaul, and they called the province north of Gaul the Gallia Belgica. Belgica. I can't speak Latin. All right, I barely speak English. Don't at me with the Latin. Just tell me how you say Gallia Bellicia, I guess. After its previous inhabitants, the Celtic and German Belage. Anyway, that's where they got the name Belgium from. And it could be an element on the periodic table because it ends in IUM. The Romans held the area for 500 years, which is pretty cool. Being able to hold something for that long, bloody hell. Then in the 5th century, the German Franks took regional control. And this was the basis of Belgium's Covent language division. It dates back to the 5th century. Oh my God. The northern region became Germanic speaking because the Dutch is a Germanic language and obviously German. And the south remained Latin based, which is French and Spanish and Italian. That's all Romantic languages. They're based on Latin. And then English is a hodgepodge of the two, and that's why none of our pronunciations make any sense whatsoever. The Counts of Flanders presided over one of the most powerful courts in medieval times. Baldwin the Iron Arm kicked it all off by kidnapping and marrying the daughter of a French king and then building a fortress in Ghent in 867 AD. Flanders produced cloth in the 10th century, but manufacture took off with the growth of cities like Bruges and Ghent in the 12th and 13th centuries. This expansion of trade meant merchant ships docked in Bruges to trade with Flemish cloths for cheese, coal, pigs, wine, fur, spices, silks, all over the world. And it's why Bruges looks like an effing fairy tale. True story. Anyway, by 1340, Ghent had grown to become the largest city in Europe after Paris. And then when Philip the Good came along, he was the Duke of Burgundy. And he took over the whole region. So he had Burgundy in eastern France and then the area covering most of modern-day Luxembourg, Belgium, and Netherlands was all part of his hood. And he ruled the kingdom from Brussels. So he's seen as Belgium's founder. Philip was the richest man in Europe, which is nice. And the magnificent Grand Palace was constructed, I think behind me, is constructed in Brussels, and the first university was founded in Louvain during his time as leader. And then Charles V was born in Ghent in 1500. He became the Duke of Brabant, the ruler of the Low Countries, a middle list, King of Spain, and later Naples, Sardinia, Italy, the Spanish territories in the New World comprising the Caribbean and Peru and Mexico, etc. And he was crowned King of Germany and then the Holy Roman Emperor in 1519. So basically he was 19 years old. Jesus Christ. And anyway, he initially ruled from Brussels, being advised by Erasmus. Yeah, Erasmus. He was there, man. However, at the time, Protestantism was on the rise in much of Europe, and in response, in 1550, Charles ordered basically this edict. Was it the Edict of Blood? I think it was the Edict of Blood. They called it. Anyway, it was death for heresy. And an approach his son Philip II continued with. Bit of vigor, actually. He implemented a string of anti-Protestant edicts and garrisoned towns in the Low Countries with Spanish mercenaries. And that's sort of why the area was called the Spanish Netherlands for a bit, because there were lots of Spanish people who had been garrisoned there by Philip II. Anyway, in 1566, the Protestants revolted, running riot, ransacking churches, and a wave of violence that became known as the Iconoclastic Fury, which is a brilliant name, because if I was going to have a rock group, I would call it the Iconoclastic Fury, because it sounds bloody brilliant. Or if I had a car. Anyway, 8,000 death sentences were handed out to those involved in the uprising. It didn't go down very well. In the turbulent years that followed, it was known as the Revolt of the Netherlands. The present-day borders of Belgium, Luxembourg, and Netherlands were kind of roughly drawn. The Netherlands expelled the Spaniards, but Belgium and Luxembourg became known as the Spanish Netherlands because they stayed on with this kind of southern rule. The Brussels claimed that it was the capital of the Spanish Netherlands in 1585, and the Protestants were forced to leave. because don't forget the Spanish were Catholic, whereas the people in the north, in the Dutch areas, were more Protestant, and going up into Scandinavia was more Protestant, and obviously Germany was more Protestant with Martin Luther and Lutheranism, etc., etc., etc. Religion's quite boring. Anyway, Antwerp's time of glory was cut short by the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, in which basically it closed part of the Scheldt River to all non-Dutch ships, and this guaranteed the golden age of Amsterdam and caused Antwerp's collapse until they discovered diamonds. Anyway, Spanish Netherlands became like a bit sort of poverty-stricken. And then in the War of the Spanish Succession, the Spanish Netherlands handed over to the Austrians. That was 1701 to 1713, I think. Anyway, so the Netherlands then... So the Austrians were then in charge of the Spanish Netherlands, which weren't actually the Netherlands. They were the other bits that weren't the Netherlands. They were called the Spanish Netherlands. And now they were owned by the Austrians. And the Austrians ruled them from 1713 to 1794. Stop me if I'm going too fast for you. But, I'm just trying to get through this because it feels like you get to a certain point and you're like, oh my God, do you really need to know this? Do you? I don't know. Anyway, so after a battle in 1794, the French reclaimed the region in the name of the Revolution. And they basically ransacked all the monasteries and churches. Yeah, and conscription was introduced, and the people of the Spanish Netherlands Belgium were a bit like, what? Anyway, a passionate peasant revolt in 1798 was cruelly put down by the French, but then Napoleon was defeated in 1815 by the Battle of Waterloo. He wasn't defeated by the battle; he was defeated at the battle. And the treaty, and then the subsequent Treaty of Vienna, led to the creation of the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, which populated the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Okay, and William of Orange Nassau was crowned the King William I in Brussels, and was given he was going to divide his time equally between Brussels and his new capital kingdom, his new kingdom's capital of The Hague. But he made a big boo-boo. Do you know what the big boo-boo was? He tried to impose a national language, which was Dutch. Well, Flemish, Dutch, whatever, Dutch. And the French-speaking people said, I don't want to speak Dutch. Damn it, I speak French, which is the same sort of thing that happened in Belarus last week when we were talking about that. So, basically the Belgian revolt began during an opera performance on the 25th of August, 1830. And just a few months later, in the January of 1831, European powers recognised Belgian independence. And the country was officially declared a neutral state. And several years later, the western portion of Luxembourg was actually ceded to Belgium. So those borders, God, they moved about, bing, 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 like, ball around a pinball machine. Eventually, borders set. So the borders were then set in the 1830s, and that's where they still are today, all over the shop, like a pork chop. Anyway, so Leopold of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, which you might recognise that surname because that's the same surname as old Queen Victoria, took to the throne. And Leopold I, he was the 40-year-old widowed uncle of Queen Victoria. And he became Leopold I of Belgium, and the country now celebrates his crowning as its annual national holiday, which is July the 21st. And the ensuing year was the start of Flemish nationalism process for people who wanted to be more Flemish, and people who wanted to be more French. And eventually that led to the language partition that divides the country to this day. Basically, they just said, listen, you Flemish people, stop trying to get the people in the south to speak bloody Flemish, and you French people, stop trying to get the people in the north to speak French. We're going to draw a line across the country, and the top is going to be Flemish land or Flanders, and the bottom is going to be French land or Wallonia, and just do your own thing. Just do your own thing, but Brussels is the capital. Brussels is the capital, and it's a separate part, actually. And then you got the little German bit that I mentioned. But yes, anyway, so moving swiftly on. Leopold was succeeded by his 20-year-old nephew. Sorry, what? Yeah, by his his 20-year-old nephew, Albert I. And then, in 1865, Leopold II came to the throne. And then literally nothing happened. Nothing of any note happened for the next I don't know, 60 years. So I'm just going to jump ahead in time. I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to come back to Leopold. You just put a pin in that. Anyway, so Albert the First came to be known as the Soldier King. I messed up there. Leopold II was succeeded by Albert the First. So it was Leopold the First, Leopold II, and then Albert the First. Albert the First actually fought in World War One. So he got the nickname the Soldier King. When war broke out, Germany violated this sort of Belgian neutrality that had stayed there for a long time and occupied the country. And Albert moved his administration to a seaside town and led the Belgian armies in an effort to man the northern end of the front line. Basically, the former town of Ypres was reduced to rubble and but courageously rebuilt. After the War of Versailles abolished Belgium's neutral status, the country was given reparations from Germany, which included a chunk of land known today as the Eastern Cantons and the colonies of Burundi and Rwanda in Central Africa. In 1934, Albert died in a rock climbing accident and was succeeded by Leopold III. From 1934 to 51, Leopold III was a bit of a dick like his predecessors, especially Leopold II. In 1940, the Germans surprise attack in the May and basically took out Belgium and Luxembourg and the Netherlands in the space of about 8 days. And Leopold III said, oh, well, I'm going to surrender to the Germans, whereas the actual government of Belgium said, screw that, and they went to London and operated as a government in exile in London. Anyway, so after the war, there was a bit of argy-bargy about that because obviously, what are you doing, you stupid king? And in 1951, he stood down and he was Balduin, the first, came to the throne. He was really popular. He lasted until 1993. And and then he was succeeded by his younger brother, Albert II, who is 84 years old and he's still alive today and he's still sitting on the throne. He's got piles as a result. Belgium emerged as a key player in world politics after World War II. It didn't have to be neutral anymore, so it joined the UN, it joined NATO, it was the founding member, one of the founding members of what would go on to become the European Union. In 1967, NATO was moved from France into Brussels. So NATO's in Brussels, as someone's just noted in the text there. And the economy has struggled. It's struggled. They've got quite a lot of public debt. Unemployment's pretty high. Unemployment's really high actually in certain areas, like 20%. It's insane. They made loads of money from the on the back of like steel and oil industries, but the slump in the 70s left the region floundering. Sorry, not Flanders. Wallonia floundering, whereas Flanders has sort of surged ahead. In 1999, the Liberalists finally got in after like 40 years in the wilderness, led by a guy called Guy Verhofstadt. Never heard of him. And he was in charge until about 2010, in which an election produced from a very fragmented political landscape with 11 parties and none with over 20% of the vote, led to the longest time any country has ever gone without a government, which was 541 days of negotiations and actually 589 days without an elected government until the 6th of December 2011. Right, I'm going to talk about Congo now. So, if you just want a nice little thing about feel-good story about Belgium, that's it. If you want to stay tuned for the absolute effing horror show that's about to be presented to you, stay tuned. I'm gonna just jump into the messages before I get on to Congo, actually. But London has a bigger population. Taxi movies, I've read that. Romina says hi. Wish we had Phoebo here. Phoebo is named after she's in Amsterdam. Menengate is in Ypres, Daily Remembrance Service. Thank you. I thought it was the Menengate. She didn't sing Moon River though. I read that one. Graham should definitely do a video with Tim the Time Traveller when it's time to travel again. But I should do a video with Tim Traveller when it's time to travel again. Yes, very good. I understand you, Hughes. Down on late again. Interesting fact, Dutch archaeologists determined how far the Roman Empire conquered in the Netherlands recently. The Netherlands was a swamp at the time, but a good place to sail off to GB from. Limburg wasn't part of the Spanish Netherlands. Luxembourg? Limburg? The etymology of the Belgi people is from the Dutch word for people who swell with anger. I've not met an angry Belgian person personally. Viva la France, says Bob. When did we get to do the colonial stuff? I'm coming to it. Apparently the Smurfs come from Belgium. I've already covered that. Note to self, next time do not use any type of headphones to listen to Graham's broadcast after 10 o'clock. Oh, sorry. Promo means leak in French, so it's commonly known in our household as Hercules leak. Leaker. Fake country, isn't it? Well, I wouldn't call it fake, but it's a bit of an oddity. It's as though France and the Netherlands had twins, and they were very different twins. You know, like Arnie and Danny DeVito in the movie Twins. Yeah. And they went, that's you. You lived. Anyway, Graham, any thoughts on Brussels being the EU capital along with Strasbourg? Well, I think the fact that Strasbourg is used as the EU capital once every couple of weeks is just crazy. I mean, it's just crazy. It's crazy. It's just some tradition that was set up because of the olden days of before the EU, before the EEC. I'd rather it was just in Brussels because everything else is there, and I don't see why we're wasting time traveling between the two. It just seems a bit odd to me. Anyway, isn't Tintin Belgian along with the Thompson twins? Indeed, he is. Maybe not the bands though. Taki says, Graham, maybe avoid the Congo. No, we're going to the Congo. We're going to the Congo. Okay, Belgium. Let's do this. Belgium was responsible for one of the greatest mass murders in history, along with the slave trade, which Britain had a big hand in, and Stalin, and there's purges and the people he killed by moving them around into places where you couldn't actually live in Russia, and with Adolf Hitler. But obviously this was a little bit before Stalin and Hitler's time. Maybe it's where they got their ideas from. The Congo is a huge country in the middle of Africa. It's the second biggest country in Africa, over 1 million square miles. Home at the time to 20 million Americans. When I say at the time, I mean in the 1880s. The Congo Free State became the world's largest supplier of wild rubber in the 1890s. And it led to a vast labour camp, 80 times the size of Belgium. Basically, a lot of the wealth that you see when you're in Belgium, especially around Brussels, big palaces, things like that, a lot of that was built with the money that Belgium made from the Congo. In fact, the Cinquantenaire was built for the 50th anniversary of King Leopold II's reign, I think. It was paid for by King Leopold II, but he didn't actually tell anyone that he paid for it. All these riches and no reference to Congo, where the actual money came from at all. There is the Royal Museum of Central Africa in Belgium, which pays homage to Leopold and his white henchmen, which I'm just going to call them that. They ran Congo as a prison state. Black people in Congo had no rights, they had no freedom, and they had no justice. The ends were seen to justify the means, and the means was, the ends was money. It was just all about the money. It was all about the money. After 25 years of an absolute horror show in Belgium, in Congo, the Congo Free State, as it was called, was handed over to Belgium. So up till then, it had been run pretty much as a private fiefdom by the monarch, by King Leopold II. Statues of Leopold have not been pulled down, and in fact, recently there's been some that have been put up. Although some street names have been changed in the last couple of years, and I will get to that at the end. Leopold was called the Little Tyrant by his own father, which when he was a child, which didn't bode well for the future. He wanted to make Belgium greater, stronger, and more beautiful. He saw the elevation of Belgium as being an elevation of himself. Now, his dad, Leopold I, had 50 attempts to try and get himself a colony, but with no real navy to speak of, or kind of, already having colonies around the world and already being quite a young country that was only really created in the 1830s. It was a little bit difficult. But Leopold didn't hold with Leopold II didn't hold with the ideals of other colonialists at the time during the scramble for Africa. They had it in their heads that they were going to do things to make things better for the people that and the places where they were colonizing. And obviously they didn't do that because people be gobshites. But Leopold took it to another freaking level. Anyway, so Congo became the last place in the world that Europeans didn't know much about. Leopold II looked around for places where he could start colonies. The Dutch East Indies were all taken already. That's Indonesia now. All the Caribbean islands that were worth anything, that you could plant anything on, were taken by other powers. All of Africa was divvied up in some way between the European powers. At the time, this is before this big conference that they had where they just literally got a map out and drew lines on it. This is when they had loads of little colonies around the coast where they would drop off if they were sailing around the Cape, and trading posts and things like that, and places to pick up slaves until the abolition of the slave trade, which obviously by the 1880s, the slave trade was, well, the international mainstream slave trade was over. Congo was slap bang in the middle of Africa, and no one knew much about it until a guy called Henry Morgan Stanley decided to cross Africa from east to west. This is the guy who said Dr. Livingstone, I presume. Now, everyone knows Dr. Livingstone, but actually Stanley is possibly more an interesting character, even though he seems to be a bit of a notorious character, to put it mildly. He managed to trek and canoe 7,000 miles across the continent of Africa, which is no mean feat, but that doesn't mean that he was a nice bloke. I don't think that he was. Anyway, he basically opened up the Congo by traveling along the Congo River, and he basically got onto good terms with Leopold II, and Leopold II spoke to his Aunt Victoria, who was Queen Victoria at the time, and he claimed that he wanted to go to Africa because his aims were charitable and philanthropic. He also claimed that he wanted to give Christianity to the savages of Africa, which was a bit wrong because he wasn't particularly Christian himself, but whatever. He claimed initially that he was going to combat the Arab slave trade. Which is a bit like, I don't know. Okay. So in 1887, he created the AIA, the International Africa Association. But at the same time, he quietly set up the Congo Association. So he had the AIA, which was all this charitable, philanthropic, let's all be nice thing. And then he had this private corporation, which was like secret as well. And he commissioned Stanley to go back to the Congo and get the chiefs all along the river to sign a piece of paper in a language they couldn't read to say that the area was now under the jurisdiction of Leopold II. And then in the African Conference, in Berlin in 1884, Leopold had got what he wanted. He got permission from the other European powers to go into Congo and do what he likes, and now he had permission from these tribal chiefs who didn't know what they were signing. And maybe they were given a blanket or some beads, and they said, sign this. And they're like, I don't know what to do. What are you talking about? I don't speak your language. What's going on? And basically, Leopold went in. So in 1885, he promised free trade, etc. But in 1885, he declared that all vacant lands belonged to the state. So literally anywhere that your house wasn't belonged to the state. And then in 1881 and 1882, he declared that all forests belonged to the state as well. So the people who lived in Congo had nowhere to grow their own food because it was actually all owned by Leopold for some reason. So they couldn't harvest, and the whole place was turned into a vast labour camp. There was a 16,000 strong army which ruled over the colony with an iron fist. Joseph Conrad was there. He wrote Heart of Darkness after his experiences in the Congo. The administration, there were executives in Brussels for his company, for King Leopold's company, and he had the Governor General in Congo, but he ran it himself. But Leopold II basically ran the place as his own private fiefdom. And he had agents and soldiers that answered to him. At first, Congo wasn't really paying its way, but then they found the rubber. Now, at the time, bicycles and motor cars were taking off all over the world, and so people wanted this new pneumatic tires that had, is it vulcanization, is it, that was developed by Dunlop, where basically he made rubber so it was nice and solid and you can use it for tires. That pushed up the global demand for rubber, and the number one place in the world for getting rubber was the Congo. He sent out these rubber quotas. So basically, you had to get as much rubber as you could, and if you didn't get enough, they'd kill you, or chop your hands off, or mutilate you, or kill your wife in front of you, or just kill you. I mean, the population of Congo went from around 20 million before Leopold turned up to about 10 million when he left 20 years later. So the population effectively halved. Basically, it was pretty horrific. The missionaries who were over there, the only people who actually cared about the local people in some way, they were at first saying, like, what the hell? It wasn't until 1895 that reports started coming out, and they were anonymous at first, saying there's really bad things going on in the Congo. We're talking torture, murder, mutilation of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Basically, there was a reverend called Sir Blum. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he was the first to go public. It was the first public account of cutting off hands. So this is a big thing in the Congo. Essentially, the local army, who were Congolese, were given cartridges to kill by their white masters, and they were told that they had to prove that they weren't wasting those cartridges. So the way they proved that they weren't wasting them is that they would chop the hands. They would chop the hands off any victim that they had killed, so they could prove that they killed. So, and they had to bring back the hands. So if they were given 9 cartridges, they had to bring 9 hands back. So if they shot someone and they missed, they would chop someone's hand off to compensate for the fact that they didn't have a hand to hand in to their white master. Anyway, I told you it was going to get heavy. It's not going to get any lighter, I swear. Basically, the king knew what was going on, but he believed that it was a price that had to be paid for the bounty that he was rightfully to receive, or something. I don't know. The guy he comes across as just a psychopath who just didn't give a flying F about the people in Congo, or just basic human decency. Antwerp, funnily enough, it takes its name from Roman legend about a giant who also cut off hands. Belgians today seem, I don't know, they're still sort of unaware. I was going to come to this a bit later on, but when I went there and I talked to people about what happened under King Leopold II, a lot of people didn't seem to know what I was talking about or what I was getting at, or the scale of the horrors that went on in the Congo. Some of the worst atrocities happened in the Equator province, and there was an official there who was an absolute monster, whose name was Leon Fivers, and he ordered at one point, this is documented, 1,000 people to be mutilated. Even the Governor General of the Congo called that area the land of horrors. He cut off 100 people's heads once because he wanted some fish in Kaseba, or manioc, but they call it, that's Kaseba basically. And they didn't provide him with the Kaseba, probably because maybe they didn't have any bloody Kaseba growing at that very exact moment, in that was whatever. But as a result of that, he killed 100 people by cutting their heads off. Basically, Leopold's agents could loot, torture, and kill with impunity. Charles Stokes was the first incident when people really started taking notice of what was going on in Congo. Actually came about because Leopold's agents killed a white man. They killed a British man who worked for a German company called Charles Stokes. He was a British trader. He was found to be trading in Congo, and he was put to death. He was sentenced to death. And Britain and Germany demanded compensation, and they did pay. Leopold did pay the compensation for this man's life, but Germany and Britain and other countries were now paying attention, and they're going, what is going on in Congo? Leopold set up, as a result, Leopold set up these new concessions, which were run by basically his men, and he took 50% of the profits. So he said, "Oh no, it's a free trade thing. We're all free trading. We're trading with the rest of the countries in Africa, and look, we've got all these concessions, and anyone can have a concession." When actually the only people who got the concessions were his men. So he kept his monopoly basically, he had this quota system. Like I said, they had to bring in so much of whatever that was demanded. It was usually rubber, and if they didn't bring in enough, they would kidnap the wives of the men of any given village, and they would hold them. They would hold them legally. They would hold them, and they would rape them, and they would mutilate them. They would kill them if the husbands didn't produce enough rubber. And the stories that are told of women being disemboweled, of just absolutely horrific things. One of the things that I heard about when I was in Congo, when I was in Kinshasa, I was told about a particular incident. It still haunts me. I didn't see it, obviously. I didn't watch it in a film or anything, but just the idea of it, just it freaks me out. It absolutely freaks me out. So basically, they had this legalized hostage system. This system with these hands where they would cut people's hands off. In 6 years, in the 1890s, shares that were being bought for £4, the equivalent of £4, were now being sold at £335. From 1895 to 1905, Leopold basically had this 10-year monopoly, pretty much on rubber, before Indonesian rubber and other rubber plantations came online. And he made an absolute mint. He made a killing. He made a massacre. He made a genocide. In 1900, there was a guy called Edmund Dean Morel, and he's the good guy of this whole rotten story. He started writing about the situation. Now, this guy was a shipping clerk in Liverpool, funnily enough. A city built on slavery. Yes, I know. But this is 100 years later. He worked over in Antwerp, and he learned a lot about what was going on in Congo. He called it a secret society of murderers, the people who were running the place. He gathered data and he used statistics. He's held as one of the first investigative journalists, along with Nellie Bly, who famously went around the world in 73 days and also checked herself into one of the old lunatic asylums in New York, I think, to see what the conditions were like inside. She pretended that she was a patient when she wasn't. So Morel, he saw all this ivory and all this rubber coming in on the ships from Congo, and these ships going back empty. They went back to Congo empty. There was no trade. They weren't buying stuff from the Congolese. They were just taking stuff. They were looting and pillaging for years. And basically, Morel set up this newspaper called the West African Mail, and he started writing about the atrocities that were going on in Congo. From his office in Liverpool, he pulled together all the evidence he could get his hands on. Unfortunately, the missionaries who had sort of made some rumblings in the mid-90s, in the mid-1890s, kind of gone a bit quiet. Apparently, they wanted the atrocities to end, but they were worried that if they blew Leopold up about it, then they wouldn't be able to continue their mission of converting people to Christianity, I guess, or something. But gradually, Morel got some of these missionaries to talk. There's a guy called Charles Banks who gave this account of what was going on in the Equator Province, about the fact that people's right hands were being chopped off in their hundreds of thousands. And in 1903, Morel got a new ally in a guy called Roger Casement. Now, Roger Casement was the British consul to the Congo Free State, and he was a bit ahead of his time, actually, old Roger. He actually had he felt like he wanted to help people rather than, I don't know, enslave them, kill them, murder them, torture them, rape them. What else was going on? And he did an official investigation on behalf of the British government. He went up the river Congo, and he spoke to key witnesses. He spoke to missionaries, and he stayed with a missionary called Joseph Clark. Stayed with him for a couple of weeks, and learnt what he could. And on the way out, he sent him a letter to the Governor General of the Congo Free State, a vitriolic letter, basically tearing him a new arse, knowing that he would never be allowed to come back to the Congo as a result of this letter. Anyway, Leopold responded to all this by a propaganda campaign like you would not believe. He launched his own newspaper, which was called the Congo Truth or something, and he paid these journalists to write these lies about what was going on in Congo. He paid for diplomats and people, missionaries, just paid off anyone he could to say good things about Congo. And it's like, people did, but enough people saw through his bullshit. And then in 1902, a private fiefdom inside Leopold's private fiefdom was discovered. So if you imagine basically there was the area that was the Congo, that was the Congo Free State, and there were missionaries there. Yeah, there was an extra area, it was about 10 times the size of Belgium, that the missionaries weren't allowed to go to. No one was allowed to go there, and that's where most of the major horrors happened. There was a lake there which used to be called Lake Leopold. It's changed its name now. In fact, the capital of Congo used to be Leopoldville, and then it became Kinshasa when it became independent, and then it became Zaire for a bit, and now it's the Democratic Republic of Congo. Basically, from this fiefdom, the king of Belgium, Leopold II, made 231 million euros profit. That's just from his fiefdom within his fiefdom. Or fiefdom. Is it a fiefdom? I don't know. He's a thief. He's got a fiefdom. I don't know. Anyway, so in Liverpool, Morel founded the Congo Reform Association in 1904. And it was sort of one of the first humanitarian projects of the 20th century. And that spread around the UK and eventually around Europe and then eventually to the US, where it gained fans from people like Arthur Conan Doyle, Mark Twain got behind it, and others. Casement's report in 1904 to the UK government led to, gave proof of the on atrocities. The King, Leopold, as a response to this, sent his own international committee to investigate, and he thought he could control them. However, he couldn't, thankfully. The judges gathered in a place called Beringa, which was picked by Leopold. But John Harris, who was a missionary up there, gathered locals to give testimony. He also arranged for the statements from these locals to be given to Morel as well over in Liverpool. The testimonies of the people who came were so harrowing that the judges were just like, this is just wrong. So much so that when the commission left, the governor of Congo committed suicide by slitting his own throat because he knew what was coming. And maybe the guilt of what he had presided over got to him. I don't think it ever got to Leopold, but Leopold never went to the Congo. He never saw the devastation that his henchmen wrought on that country. Anyway, the commission report was published, and the king was criticised even in Belgium. And then in 1906, Morel's book, Red Rubber, was published, and it had this cover, and the cover was brilliant. It had, the old Egyptian hieroglyphs where it has Anubis, the god of the underworld, the jackal-headed god, and he's measuring the weight, and you're supposed to measure the weight of your soul against a feather in the afterlife. And on the illustration on the front of Morel's book, he had King Leopold sitting on one scale, and on the other side of the scale was one severed black hand. That was really powerful stuff. Basically, the Morel was calling for Leopold II to be hanged for the crimes against humanity. He wanted to see him on trial in The Hague, because The Hague just started then, the International Court of Criminal Court, and The Hague had just started around that time. And finally, God, I know you're watching this going, Graham, can you just get this over with? Finally, in 1908, I mean, this nightmare over with. And finally, in 1908, Belgium stepped in and told Leopold to sling his hook. He was given 50 million francs from the Belgian government as a sign of gratitude. He died the following year. People booed his coffin as it went past. But statues, like I said, of Leopold II still exist around Belgium. Pull those fuckers down. That's all I can say to any Belgians watching who might have seen us in the UK. Well, not me personally, but we pulled down the statue of Edward Coulson, who was a slave trader in Bristol. Pull them all down. Just these people should not have statues. They were butchers. They were murderers. They were scumbags. They were thieves. They were brigands. They were pirates. They were rapists. They don't deserve statues. Make a museum of their atrocities, if you like, but don't make them an object of veneration. Anyway, so Belgium pretended it was still doing good old, civilizing of the savages. And luckily for them, even though the arse fell out of the rubber market, there was diamonds and gold there. So, they did all right until 1960 when they finally left, and Congo got its own government, and then things were great ever afterwards. No, they weren't. They were terrible. A dictator put in by the West presided over the change of the name of the country to Zaire, and basically ran the place as his own private fiefdom until 1997 when he was deposed. And then we had two Congolese wars, which resulted in the deaths of over 4 million people. Did you miss them? They happened between 1997 and about 2001. Yeah? No? Just me? 4 million people died. Look it up. Anyway, so recently, I'm going to give the Belgians this. Things have been changing, which is good. And one of the things that have been changing has been street names. So the street names, where it's been called Leopold Avenue or whatever, they're getting rid of it, changing it to something else. That's good. Adam Hochschild's book, King Leopold's Ghost, which I really, really recommend. And it's one of those books that I can't believe hasn't been made into a film yet. But apparently it's going to be by Ben Affleck soon. It was announced a couple of years ago. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But I would really love to see the movie of that. Although I think it's going to be quite a harrowing watch, to say the least. Human zoos. Oh my God. So basically, from 1885 till 1958, Belgium brought black people over from Africa to put them in zoos. And they were put on show in the cities. In the summer of 1897, Leopold would again import 267 Congolese people to Brussels to be put on show around his palace in Tervuren, east of Brussels, paddling their canoes on the Royal Lakes. Around 1.3 million Belgians, out of a population of 4 million, visited, walking along a rope bridge to get the best view. 7 of the Congolese incomers died of pneumonia and flu. Their bodies were again dumped in an unmarked mass grave at the local cemetery. In October last year, Antwerp Museum actually did an exhibition acknowledging these horrific zoos where people would pay money to come and see black people who were doing black people things for their amusement. And that went on till 1957. Anyway, Congo's still in trauma to this day. And I feel like when people go, oh no, Graham, we shouldn't talk about the past because then the people that we've wronged in the past might ask for reparations. And I'm thinking, I think we owe them some freaking reparations the way we have behaved as Europeans, as humans, I guess. But Congo is a stain on the history of Belgium that I feel needs to be highlighted a bit more. But I guess in Belgium, maybe they have the same sort of attitude as they do in this country when you try and say, hey, look, we did some good things in the past, but we also did some absolutely fucking horrific things in the past. And, come to some kind of peace with that and say, yeah, I can acknowledge that we did bad things in the past. I'm not going to pretend that we didn't. And I'm certainly not going to jump down the throats of people pointing it out just because you feel like you don't want to know this. But I think you do want to know this because you watch my show. And you probably knew what was going to come along with that. But yes. Okay. Right. I am going to jump into, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm going to jump into the comments. Zaire, wasn't it? The Belgian conquered the Conquest of the Congo shitstorm is about to begin. Cool. Can't be bothered with the boring stories of peace and prosperity anyway. Indeed. In the 90s, King Badioun refused to sign the legalization of the abortion, so the Conservative Prime Minister dethroned him for a day and signed the law himself. That's quite fascinating. Although Belgium, on a good point, right? Good point about Belgium. Second country in the world to legalize gay marriage, and also the second country in the world to legalize euthanasia. After Netherlands, I think, in both counts. Another Stan Lee cameo. Yes, very good. I'll see what you've done there. Street name square in Brussels in honour of Joe Cox. What is there in the unelected, corrupt UK? Well, exactly. Seems a bit weird now that Leopold got permission from other Western states to basically own Congo without anyone having been there. Well, one of the reasons for that, Conservator, is that the other countries were all fighting amongst themselves for like everywhere else, and they all wanted Congo, but they didn't really know what was there, but they were like, we want that bit, we want that bit. So instead of them fighting amongst themselves, Leopold stepped in, and then, a piece of politesse or diplomacy or, I don't know, skullduggery, he managed to, without a navy, without any kind of conquest, he managed to carve him out a massive piece of Central Africa. Also, I mean, I haven't mentioned this, but the history of Rwanda and Burundi since the First World War, when Belgium took them over, isn't great either. And a lot of the problems that they sowed in those communities, i.e., Tutsis would be given the top jobs over Hutus in Rwanda and in Burundi as well, actually. And the Belgians didn't really care whether they were actually from a particular tribe or not. They'll just regard them by the shape of their nose to say, you're Hutu, you're Tutsi. And that led to the build-up of resentment against the Tutsis amongst the Hutu people, which led to the horrific genocide in 1994 in Rwanda, in which 800,000 people were killed in the space of just a few weeks with machetes, not even with bloody semi-automatics. Absolutely horrific. But it's one of these things. It's like all over Africa, the crimes that have been committed in the past still haunt the continent to this day. History ended after World War II when I was at school. We got some extra pages on the EU, but that's it. So we didn't learn about it. Always found that weird. Didn't learn about the Troubles of Palestine either. Anthony says, is it like the UK? A lot of people don't even know any of the history of the island of Ireland, and it's the evidence of the atrocities caused by the British Empire. Yeah, it is a lot like that. People just don't want to know, because a lot of people, the only thing they feel good about in their life is the fact that they're from a particular country, a particular neck of the woods. And then if you say, well, you know, when you did that, that was a bit bad, they take it personally. They think you're saying, oh, you did this, you did that. Apologize for these crimes that other people committed before you were born. And that's not what you need to do. You don't need to apologize for it. You need to acknowledge it and help where you can. It's your responsibility, coming from a rich country that has built this amazing society around us. I mean, it's not particularly great in the UK at the moment, but still, we've got one hell of an infrastructure here. That was paid for, a lot of it, by Britain's misdeeds around the world. You go to the British Museum, go and see all the stuff that was plundered from around the world, including the Parthenon marbles and the Rosetta Stone. It's just like, it's Egyptian. It doesn't have English on it. The Truth About Hillsborough is a paper still going and now called The Sun. Chubai, the Sun newspaper is not allowed in Liverpool. Jeremy Goff, The Sun is a major reason why Liverpool voters remain, as they don't take that excuse for a news outlet. Also, I mean, the fact that the EU provided Liverpool with £2 billion of funding through the Objective 1 funding to get us back on our feet. So people were really concerned about the paedophile news when I was there, 2000, 2001. Yeah, that was a big thing at the time, actually. Liverpool does its own thing, always has. Please like this horror story so it's viewed by more people. Thanks. Oh, Jesus Christ. The Congolese horror story. So have we concluded Belgium is in fact the most boring country yet? I don't think it is. I think it's kind of weirdly fascinating as a country, but yeah. Ever 404, vengeance not found. That could be more expensive than Brexit, Graham, indeed. 1957, yes, Conservative. There were still these zoos being put on in 1957. Isn't that the same Morgan Stanley as the bank? Probably, I don't know. I've got a super chat from Martin. Yay! My first ever super chat to Graham. Thank you for my €5. Obviously, my voice is going after all that. Yeah, I got it all out. Got there in the end. The Scum newspaper. Nice one, Martin, says Glasgow Kiss. Right. I'm thank you very much for my super chats. I know I'm not going to make much money slagging off countries' history. Art Deco, etc. was very interesting. Yeah, Art Deco, Art Nouveau was a big thing in Belgium as well. A lot of us think of it as French, but a lot of it came from Belgium. Mechelen really got me, used as a collection point for 100,000 Jews by the Nazis. Jesus Christ. Oh, the atrocities piled on atrocities. After that brutal but necessary history lesson, I guess it isn't time to pivot to Graham's personal travels through the country. Adam, no. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say about Belgium. I mean, every time I've been there, I've been travelling through. To be honest, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I've been to Brussels a couple of times to go to the EU Parliament and stuff. We'll talk to people there. Yeah, I don't really have that many. Do I have any anecdotes? I don't know if I have. Been there loads of times, but do you know what? I've never been to Bruges. Never been to Bruges. Kath and I want to go there. So there you go. A 30-minute rant, like the video anyway. Thank you, MMTB 1972. I'm glad you don't bite me head off there. Okay, so I've gone way over time, so I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to comic museums in Brussels. Yes, because comics are huge in Belgium. I'm gonna have to cut it off there. So I will return next week. I will be talking about. Get rid of that. Oh no, that's another Europe book. I've got 2 Europe books. There you go. Central America. Right. Next week we shall be going to the Central American country of British Honduras, or Belize as it's known in New Money. Glasgow Kiss, I married her. What? Alex Morgan, another good stream. Graham, love your deep dive into countries. Looking forward to Belize. Can't wait to hear about those German Mennonites. Anthony says, I've only landed in Basel to go to France for a music festival. You can't just leave it there. Talk to us about your talk to the EU Parliament. Pineapple Boy, I didn't talk to the EU. I just talked to people there. I didn't talk at the Parliament or anything. It was just, when I was failing to, convince people that it might be a good idea to stay in the EU. But never mind. My mum says good night. Good night, Mum. Graham Hughes, presentation is great, but when is Belgium going to follow Brexit Britain's example and liberate itself from Brussels? Yes. I mentioned that, didn't I, the other day when I was talking about when I went to Istanbul. I was a bit bemused by the fact they've got like an independent square. And I was like, but you were the centre of the Ottoman Empire. Who did you get independence from yourself? Jeremy Goff says, if you go to Bruges, don't eat in the main square. Hit the side streets, much better and cheaper. Yorkshire logic. Thank you, Jeremy. You can ask me, I work there. Oh, cool. I want to learn about Jamaica. Jamaica's coming up in, 3 years or so by the time I get to bloody J. It's going to take me the whole of this year to get to D in the alphabet. Denmark, Djibouti. Oh, yes, we got a €3.50 from Conservator. Thank you very much, Conservator. Really appreciate it. I got a super sticker, and it's a pair character stretching his arm forward, raising his thumbs up. Because on here, it gives you a description of what the thing is. Brilliant. Okay, so, in conclusion, Brussels, Belgium, great little country now. Few shady things in the past. Probably needs to address that. Take down the statues of Leopold. I'll help. It's always fun to rip down a statue of a wrong-un. And I'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock for Hughes Round, incorporating Brexit reality, etc. And until then, I will wish you all the best and say fair winds and following seas, traveller. Oh, actually, I was going to show you my... I was going to put up my wonderful patrons, wasn't I? That's what I'm doing now. I'll put up my patrons. Should we do that again? Patrons. There we go. Okay. So, until next time, fair winds and following seas, traveller.